Greetings! It is I, Master Inkheart, here to take over Zinniop's channel while he is busy celebrating the birthday of a kid that died or something. One of my passions is linguistics, particularly gendered language. I've always been fascinated by the idea that you can identify a noun by whether it appears more masculine or feminine, and I've added it to my greatest creation, Chavoris. But would it surprise you to learn that humans themselves also have genders, and not just that their names are gendered nouns as evidenced by pronouns, but that the individual people have a gender? Why does this matter to me? Well, I am a noun, so I needed to have a gender. I knew I couldn't be neutral gender because they is for plural and it is too degrading. Also, neutral gender is just as incorrect as male or female, because I'm not any gender at all. I chose to identify as female purely based on the vibes I got from studying gendered nouns in French and some Marflesian. But now it seems like gender is an incredibly complicated matter based on how close you fall between the archetypal male and archetypal female. And I just wanted to know, what is gender, and how can I use it for my own purposes? Well, grammatical gender is an intrinsic category of nouns which affects the ending of an adjective used to describe it. Grammatical gender emerged in Proto-Indo-European, but every branch has dealt with it differently, with one or two of them deleting it entirely. From the remaining branches, I've selected Albanian, German, Greek, Gujarati, Northern, Kurdish, Lithuanian, Russian, Spanish, and Welsh. So what are the similarities between feminine nouns and masculine and neuter nouns in order to avoid them? Pulled mostly from the Swadesh list, I created a list of 100 nouns consisting of 15 humans, 13 animals, 29 body parts, 21 objects from nature, 15 man-made items, and 8 natural phenomena. After translating these into the 9 languages, I had a codex of genders to pull from. Let's start with the form of the word. In Albanian, feminine nouns end almost exclusively with or e. Masculine nouns tend to end in a consonant or a different vowel, although it's only loosely predictable, and there are plenty of exceptions. German is much less predictable. Many feminine nouns end in but a lot just don't. Masculine nouns often end in n or nd, but many don't. German serves as a good representative for the Germanic language family because they tend to lack consistent word endings. Almost every masculine noun in Greek ends in sigma. The only exception is kokalo, bone. Feminine nouns tend to end in alpha or eta, but some end in sigma, and neuter nouns tend to end in iota or omicron, but some end in alpha or sigma. Gujarati words always end in a vowel, except for those that end in m, which is actually just a transliterated way of saying they end in a nasal vowel. These are mostly neutral. The majority of words end in a short a, which is largely silent and therefore actually is ending in a consonant, but masculine nouns can also end in o, and feminine can end in e. In Northern Kurdish, it's the masculine nouns that tend to end in vowels, while the feminine end in consonants, although this is more of an interesting thing than something actually useful or meaningful. Lithuanian masculine nouns end entirely in s or uo, except for nouns which are compulsory pluralized like fat and ashes. Some feminine nouns also end in s, but the majority end in e or a. Due to the effort of grammar reformers, every feminine noun in Russian ends in a or ya or the myaky znak, and every masculine noun except mushina ends in a consonant or the myaky znak. There are probably rules for determining the myaky znak, but I don't care. Every neuter noun ends in o, ye, or mya. Every Spanish noun ending in o, except mano, is masculine, and every noun ending in a is feminine, but there are still plenty of unpredictable endings, and there are no rules in Welsh, it's just nonsense. In Proto-Indo-European, gender is determined by the ending, of which there are, in theory, only a few. There are 39 PIE noun-forming suffixes that we've determined, only 36 of which form the same gender, and unfortunately it seems like Proto-Indo-European was plenty erratic, and patterns were derived from convergence in descended languages. Nevertheless, all feminine suffixes except tis, is, and sor end in h2, the A-coloring laryngeal, which explains that A ending that shows up in many IE languages. Sor is more of an adjective ending turned noun anyways. Masculine suffixes end in s, o, or n, and neutral suffixes end in syllabic consonants or m. This seems largely consistent with what we observe in modern languages. To this end, I'm changing my name to Mastra Inkharta. Actually, that sucks, but enough about sounds, let's talk morphology. The words that every language translates as feminine are, of course, a woman, wife, daughter, sister, or mother, but also a street and the night. The words universally translated as masculine are, of course, a man, husband, son, brother, or father, but also smoke or a wolf. Ignoring humans, the next 10 most feminine concepts are the vagina, shoes, skin, salt, feathers, lice, the wheel, a hand, soil, and a cat. Ignoring humans, the next 10 most masculine are a bird, a horse, a a path, horns, the penis, wheat, a dog, deer, names, and teeth. But I have, of course, broken it up by category. So let's look at each category. Generally, common animals default to masculine with a separate word for specifically the female. This is true of most mammals, with the exception of cat, as previously mentioned, and fox, which still uses the same system, but in many languages defaults purely to feminine. Insects and more creepy animals are feminine, with mice situated firmly in the middle. Over to things in nature. Among rocks, stone and mountain are masculine, while sand, salt, dirt, and ashes are feminine. Among plants, wheat, grass, and trees are masculine, while bark and leaves are feminine. Beside that, eggs are masculine. Do with that what you will, I don't think it makes any sense. In Greek, the vast majority of body parts are neutral. In Kurdish, it's masculine. Ignoring the obviously gendered penis, testicles, breasts, and vagina, it's much harder to observe a pattern. Hard things like teeth, knees, fingernails, and horns are masculine, while soft organs like the heart, liver, lungs, and skin are more feminine, though belly and fat serve as something of a counterexample. Among man-made objects, more modern things like window, wheels, cars, and streets are feminine, while older things like paths, names, winter, and houses are masculine. Of course, outliers like the masculine paper and key and feminine shoes exist, though paper largely being a loan word is a possible explanation. That leaves natural phenomena. This category is largely feminine, and the correlation is blindingly obvious. Evening, night, the stars, and the moon are mostly feminine, while daytime, morning, and the sun are relatively more masculine. So, what about Proto-Indo-European? Well, like I said, it's not the content root that determines the gender of the word, but the suffix, which has a much more elusive meaning. Often, all we've been able to reconstruct is that a certain suffix forms nouns from a root. But it's not like that would be much help, because unlike in word ending, it hasn't remained the same throughout evolutions. Look at tongue. In PIE, this was dnkas, and as you can tell from the H2 in the ending, it's a feminine noun. In German, Gujarati, and Spanish, it remained feminine. In Kurdish, Lithuanian, Russian, and Welsh, it switched over to masculine. Same with salt. The original gender of ses is unclear, but that's because it ended up as feminine in Spanish and Russian, neutral in German and Greek, and masculine in Welsh. This can partially be explained by the erasure of the neutral gender, which nouns being sorted randomly afterwards. The PIE cher, meaning heart, is neutral, and accordingly becomes neutral in the German Herz and Russian serce, and believe it or not, the Gujarati dil. Kurdish lacks a neutral, so its version of dil is masculine. Lithuanian instead independently sorts shirdis into feminine. However, this doesn't explain why Greek, which does and always has had a neutral gender, uses kardia, a feminine word. So, it seems like gender is controlled by modern definition and perception rather than etymology. Either that or it's an arbitrary category with no real application, but that wouldn't be the case. Linguistics is our friend. So, now we can reconstruct what a male and female human would have looked like based on this information and my memory. Males obviously possessed a penis while females had a vagina. Additionally, women had two breasts while males only had one, and the opposite was true for testicles. This much is widely accepted by historians. Teeth and hands are a bit harder to place. It's difficult to demystify their potential reproductive purpose and why they were so gendered, but here's my theory. Many birds have something called an egg tooth for breaking out of eggs, and I believe teeth served a similar purpose in humans, to sever the umbilical cord of a female. Whatever the reason, the writings of Aristotle certainly support the fact that women had far fewer teeth than men. The hands are a bit plainer. I believe that males never truly lost their hands, but the fingernails they grew for defensive purposes hindered the functionality females were capable of. Females were smaller and they largely stayed alive through their nocturnal lifestyle. This is further supported by their analogous creatures. Males are compared to large diurnal mammals, while females to small nocturnal creatures. It's possible that females burrowed underground while the males nested in trees. The author declares no conflict of interest.